All right, so again, you should have your note packet out. So we're going to do one-step equations again, except for now we're going to look at multiplication and division. So we kind of ended here for one step with adding and subtracting. Today we're going to look at multiplying and dividing. So remember, multiplication and division are inverse operations, so they undo each other. Okay, so normally if we see multiplication in a problem, we're going to be using division. If we see division, we're going to use multiplication to kind of work our way backwards. So these are the first two problems we're going to look at. So remember, we want to keep drawing that line down the equal sign so that we're separating our two sides of our equation, especially when we get into really longer equations where there's a lot of stuff going on over here and a lot of stuff going on over here. We want to keep that line drawn. So when we see a letter and a number right next to each other with nothing written in between, remember this means that we're multiplying there. Okay, so this is 3 times t. So to undo it, we're going to divide. And oftentimes in algebra, when we write divide, we use the fraction bar, which also means to divide by 3. Okay, remember, whatever we do to one side, we also have to do to the other. Okay, equations will get messy if you're using this division sign, so we really try to not use that sign in algebra. Okay, so I want you to get in the habit of using your fraction bar. So when we have multiplication and division, this actually is not canceling to 0 like we saw in our addition and subtraction video. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay, so we're canceling to 1. So what's really happening is we're getting a 1t here. And then negative 27 divided by 3 gives me a negative 9. So that 1, we don't have to write. You can. Okay? It's there. So when this is canceling, we know it's canceling to 1, and I just have my t left, or 1t. So if you prefer to write the 1, you can. It's just, in algebra, a lot of times we don't write 1. It's just implied. We know it's there. We don't have to write it. Okay? So I have t is equal to negative 9. All right, and we still want to get in the habit of checking our answers, especially for once we get into our longer problems. So we're practicing now. So remember, we're just substituting our answer in for the variable into the original equation. Okay, so my original equation said 3 times t, so I'm just going to use parentheses here. We think t is negative 9 equals negative 27. Now when we check, we're not moving things from side to side. We're just simply bringing each side down and calculating it if there's anything that needs to be calculated. So negative 27 stays negative 27. 3 times negative 9 gives me negative 27. Are those equal? Yes, they are, so we have the right answer. Okay, if this ever is not equal, your answer is wrong. Okay. So let's do another example kind of together, and then I'll have you try some on your own. So variables on this side this time. So remember, our goal is to get it alone. So that means we need to cancel this negative 4. The negative 4 is being multiplied there. So the inverse is to divide by a negative 4. Okay, and it is important to keep that negative because we want a positive x down here. So a negative divided by a negative is what's going to give me that positive 1x. Okay, so remember, these are canceling to 1. If you want to write it there, you can. 80 divided by 4 gives us 20, and because I have different signs, we're going to have a negative 20. And then do a quick check. 80 is equal to negative 4 times negative 20. Positive 80 there, positive 80 there. Yes, those are equal. Okay, so here are 2 I would like you to try. Write them down and pause the video. All right, keep drawing that line down the middle. So let's see how you did. We have multiplication here. Inverse is to divide by the negative 6. Negative divided by a negative gives me a positive 1. Negative divided by a negative gives me a positive 8. So I'm going to check that real quick. Remember, we're just substituting that value in for where m was, not changing anything else. So nothing to calculate on this side. That also gives me negative 48. So I have the right answer. Okay, remember, it doesn't take long to check, and it keeps track of your negative signs. So if you had a negative 8 there, you would not have a negative 48 here, and then those would not be equal, and it could help you go back and fix your integer error. So here we want to cancel this 9. We're canceling to 1. And then I've got a negative 6 for x. So does 9 times negative 6 equal negative 54? Yes, it does. Okay, so now we're going to look at some division problems together. So again, most division problems in algebra are written with the fraction bar too. So this says n divided by 8. So we're just going to look at this first one first, because this one is different. So I'm going to draw my line. Because I have division, the inverse is to multiply. So multiplication, I like to use that dot, not the x, so that I don't confuse it with a variable. So we need to times both sides by 8. Now this side, be careful, this does not turn into 8 times 8 and give us 64, because that's not canceling either. So what we need to realize is this 8 has a 1 on the bottom. This 8 is already on the bottom of a fraction. Okay, so this is kind of like we can bring that 1 in that we know is in front of that variable. So I'm really multiplying 8 times 1/8 here. So remember, when we multiply fractions, we go straight across. So this is actually 8 over 8, which is 1. Okay, so these do cancel. So a lot of times you don't have to write this out if you realize that they're canceling to 1. So even when we're canceling out division with multiplication, we're canceling to that 1n. And then on this side, I get negative 40. Okay, so if I check my answer, I'm going back to my original equation. So it was n over 8. I think n is negative 40, so negative 40 over 8. That's supposed to equal negative 5. I bring my negative 5 down, and then I think about this division. Is negative 40 divided by 8? Yes, that's negative 5. We have the correct answer. Okay, so that's one type of division problem where we see the variable on the top. Notice in this one, our variable's on the bottom. So this again is one of our one-step equations that's actually a two-step. It's just kind of disguised as a one-step. They look very similar. I'm going to draw my line. So we're dividing by d here, right? If I read this out loud, it's negative 30 divided by d. So I have to multiply by d also, my variable. Because what that does is, so it's still canceling my variable. I've got 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. And I have negative 30 left on this side. And on this side, I now have a 3d, right? I can't multiply 3 by d because I don't know what d is. So it just stays 3 times d. So what we just did is we got rid of our variable on the bottom, because that's never a good thing. And we've turned it into a multiplication problem to solve, like we did up here. So in order to cancel my multiplication I see here, we should be dividing by 3, because I know that that's going to cancel to 1. So I can do that on the other side, right? We always got to do it on both sides. So now I have d is equal to negative 10. So if your variable is ever on the bottom, that's a kind of two-step also. So to check, negative 30 divided by d is supposed to equal 3, and it does. Okay, so the division ones are the trickier ones. So I'm going to have you try one of each of those on the next page here. So take a second to write those down. Okay, here we've got the variable on the top, here we've got the variable on the bottom. And I want you to try those on your own first. Okay, so now that you've finished those, let's take a look. So n divided by 13, so that means I have to multiply by 13 to cancel it. I also have to do it on the other side. This is, when we start getting into division problems, this is where I see students forget to do it to the other side. So make sure you're doing it to both sides. N is equal to 26. Circle my answer. Do a quick check. Yes, 26 works when I plug it in. So 26 is my answer. Okay, here, remember we're dividing by D. So I need to multiply by D on both sides. So all this is really doing is canceling my variable on this side and kind of moved it to the other side because I can't multiply here. I don't know what D is. So I just have 10D. I need to cancel that 10 still. Our goal is to get this variable alone. It's not alone yet, so divide by 10 will give me my 1. So D is equal to 4. So if I plug that in to check, we are correct. Okay, especially with the division problems, I know some of you know the answer just by looking at the equation. Remember, you will not get points if you just write down the answer. You need to be able to show me your steps. Okay, or I will mark it wrong. I don't care if you have the right answer. I need to see your steps. Okay. So another type of problem we got to look at that can happen is if we have a fraction, okay, number in front of our variable. So notice this is the same problem, so that's why I kind of bolded this box. If you want to do that in your notes too, you can. It might kind of be a nice way to go back and find this type of problem in your notes. But that's up to you. So I'm going to solve the same problem twice. Okay, one is going to be more in a one-step. The other one's going to be more in a two-step. And you just pick whichever one you like better. And you do it that way every time. Okay, so you don't have to know both ways, you just need to know one of them. So pick which one kind of speaks to you. So I'm still going to draw my line. So if I were to do this problem, this is multiplication here. And this is division. So if that's how we can kind of think about this as a two-step, is because I've got two operations. I've got division and I've got multiplication. So to do this, the first one I need to cancel is my one on the bottom, which means your division here. We're going to get rid of my 5. Since I'm being divided by 5 here, I can multiply both sides by 5. Okay, what that's going to do is, since I've got a 5 on the top and a 5 on the bottom here, those will cancel each other out and leave us with your 2x. Okay, and on this side I have to do that multiplication, which turns into negative 10. So just by doing that, I get my one-step multiplication problem here, right? I have 2 times x. So to clear that 2, we're going to use the inverse and divide both sides. That cancels to 1x, and we get negative 5. Okay. Now, checking is going to take a little bit longer the more complicated problems we have. And I know you guys see a fraction, so you're like, I don't know if I should check it. But these are the ones where you're more likely to make an error, so you want to take the time to check your answer. So remember, we're taking the original problem. So it was 2/5 x. So I'm going to put this in parentheses. And because I have a fraction over here, I'm going to write my negative 5 as a fraction too. So I'm going to put the 1 on the bottom. That's supposed to equal negative 2. Okay, so there's nothing for us to do on this side, so we're just going to bring down our -2. Remember, multiplying fractions, we do straight across, so the top we multiply together, the bottom we multiply together. And then remember, this fraction bar means divide also. So -10 divided by 5, that also gives me -2. Yes, those equal each other. Okay, so it's really easy to make a mistake on these ones and do your steps in the reverse order, so that's why we might want to check our answer. So that's the 2-step way. Let's look at what we do if we have a 1-step. So with fractions, we can multiply by the reciprocal. So if you don't remember what the reciprocal is, that's this fraction flipped. So since I have 2 over 5, if I flip that, it's 5 over 2. Okay, and I'm going to write it on both sides real quick. I'm going to show you why we want to do this. So reciprocals have a special property because always when I multiply a fraction by its reciprocal, its flipped fraction, it will always turn into 1. Because this becomes 10 over 10, right, if I multiply straight across. And we know 10 over 10 is 1, so it turns into my 1x. So a lot of times I'm like, those cancel, and now I have my x left. Okay, so then on the other side, we've got to turn the -2 into a fraction so we can multiply straight across. This turns into -10 over 2. Okay, when we divide that, -10 over 2 becomes -5. So you have the same answer. It just depends on if you want to get there in 2 steps or 1 step. Okay, and the checking's the same, so I'm not going to recheck it. It should look just like this one when we plug that -5 in. Okay, so fractions still do come up a lot in solving equations. So I want you to pause and try to. Yes, these are 2 different ones, so pick which way you like best. All right, so you should have both those done. So I'm going to do one of these using a 2-step and one of them doing a 1-step, just so you can kind of see both ones. But either way, you should get the same answer. So I'll do the 1-step first. Okay, that's personally what I choose most of the time, but I've been solving equations for a really long time. So I know I can flip this, okay, and I have to keep that negative. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side, 3 over -2. I know that the 3's cancel, and I know that the -2's cancel to give me n. So then I'm going to put a 1 on the bottom. 12 over 3 gives me 36. 1 times -2 gives me -2. And then I need to simplify that. So 36 divided by 2, if you don't know what that is, okay, you can use the space over here to divide. We should get -18. So then if I check, plugging in -18, I'm going to put a 1 on the bottom. That's supposed to give me 12. So when I do this side, I'm going to get positive 36 over 3. 36 over 3 is 12. Yes, those equal each other. All right, now say you did the 2-step version. I'll do on this side. So first I have to clear this divide by 5. So the inverse would be to multiply by 5. So I'm going to cancel that out, and I'm left with 4p is equal to -40. Divide by 4, because I have multiplication, so I need to divide. That cancels to 1. P equals -10. Okay, if you're not super great at multiplying fractions, you might prefer the 2-step one. Okay, I love fractions. I'm pretty quick at multiplying them. So that's why I like the 1-step. So real quick check, 4/5 times -10, putting a 1 on the bottom. Nothing to do on this side, so I'm bringing down that negative 8. This becomes negative 40 over 5, which also simplifies to negative 8. Good, so you've seen all the different types of problems we could have with multiplication and division, including fractions. So I just have 4 more for you to practice in this video, so I'm going to show you all 4 at once. Okay, feel free to look back at other problems if you need to, but pause and try them first. All right, so you should have those done. So I'm just going to real quick show you what you should have. So these were the last 4 problems there. Okay, so if you're ever still stuck on a problem and my video doesn't explain it all the way, remember you could like star it and ask me the next in-class day and we can kind of look at that problem.